you, Nikki, and thanks everyone for coming. The last call we did, we were really struck by the people who came to the call, and again, like a sense of huge responsibility comes with all of these people who are working so amazingly on the ground. And really our aim is to try and support that work in the best way we can, and that's the motive for the call. I just want to give like a really brief introduction, and then we're just going to continue with hearing from Patricia and from Chris. I just wanted to give a context. I want everyone to know that this is a prototype. Like, we started the first one yesterday, and this is the second one today, and we're learning so much. But one of the things we're learning is that we wanted to give a better framing for what this journey is. So we really wanted to be clear that our goal is that everyone learns and makes progress in overcoming their challenges to better serve the local community. And so it was important to bring that this is more of a journey than one-off webinar call where we're just going to hear from experts. That's really important. That helps us. For example, today it's about expanding perspectives. We've got a specialist and an innovator, but also time for sharing with peers. And on the second call, which is next week, we're going to be discovering next steps where people will bring specific case studies so people can actually relate what's being brought up to their specific situation on the ground. So we wanted to make this really practical. And then a third step, which is going to be an optional step, is that maybe people will want to continue to support each other because there's amazing people in this group and you share common challenges and it was great and you want to continue. And in which case we're going to provide some support for that to happen. So I just want to talk about the agenda for today, just so we're all aligned and know what's coming. Sometimes I think all of us are experiencing a bit too much of not knowing what's coming. So it's nice to have some clarity as to what's about to happen, even if it's just for the next hour and a half. So there's the introduction, which we've just done. And then we're going to have a big picture presentation and question and answer from Patricia, a grassroots presentation from Chris from the Clink. And then we're going to have a small moment of individual reflection on what was said up until that point. And then we're going to go into a small group peer-to-peer sharing on local challenges, insights, and then what themes do people want to deepen and address in the next call. And then from that, we're going to find participants, people that want to volunteer their situation so that we can use real case studies of things that are actually happening on the ground to investigate the themes that most interest us. I just want to make a request for this experience to be beneficial for all about the importance of a quiet space. So if you're not in a quiet space at the moment and it's easy to get to one, now's the time to start moving. Also the importance of video, like it helps us to be more personal and connect. So if possible and your connection allows it, please use video wherever possible. And have a pen and paper ready nearby. Because there's going to be one moment in which we're going to take some individual notes and then we're going to share that. So that would be great if you could have a pen and paper, or if that's not possible, then I guess Google Docs is our replacement for that nowadays. And then the last thing is just the importance I wanted to say of the peer-to-peer participation. We're going to hear from Patricia and we're going to hear from Chris, but I really want to, I've seen so many times in these groups that the thing that we most need to hear often comes from somewhere where we least expect it. And it could be from someone else who's just participating with you. So when we break out into the smaller groups, I'd really encourage everyone to give that as much value and participation as all of the other moments. And thank you. Let's go. So Patricia's gonna have 20 minutes now. She's gonna break into a part presentation and part question and answer. So if you've got questions that come up as you hear her talking, then make sure you write them down. And then when Patricia's finished, then we'll take questions and we'll go into a dialogue on that. Thank you so much.
My turn?
Yes, your turn.
Okay, thank you, Ki, for the introduction. Thank you, Nikki, for the opportunity. Thank you, Davi. It's a pleasure to be with you guys. I have known Davi's work for many years, I think since 2011 or so. I was the president and CEO of Brazil Foundation, which is a grant-making foundation that we had to fundraise and mobilize resources and invest in programs in Brazil. And Davi and Gastromotiva was one of the grantees. So I followed his work throughout these years and how it has evolved. And I'm happy to be here and share some perspectives on what's happening now in philanthropy and in the nonprofit sector. I am based in the US, so I follow American philanthropy very closely. I am from Brazil and I worked with Brazilian organizations in my career at Brazil Foundation. So I also follow the philanthropic landscape very closely in Brazil. Not so much in other places of the world, but some of the trends that I will talk about will apply to other regions. I know there are people here from all over the world. But, you know, I think we need to understand and acknowledge where we are now. So this pandemic caught everyone by surprise. The effects of the pandemic will be far-reaching, and while we cannot control what's going to happen or the effects of the pandemic, we can control our actions and we can control our attitudes. So I think this is where we should begin. And I think we need to acknowledge that the situation is tough. We should acknowledge that. We should also acknowledge that our actions and how we're going to respond to the situation is not going to be perfect, because we are all like working from home. Everything has changed very fast. But we must, at this moment, acknowledge our causes and the people we serve and what we stand for. And the people we serve are not looking for perfection right now, but they are looking for the best that each of us can do right now. So I think that we need to first let this sink in, that and we cannot lose sight of the causes, of the mission. You know, Nikki presented the mission and everything that social gastronomy movement stands for. And I think has never been a more important time. You know, the movement is important, it was before, it's even more important. The work that each of you do is more important today than it has ever been. And I understand that organizations are under a lot of financial stress, but the importance of your work is even bigger right now. So with that in mind, I think the crisis creates challenges, but also opportunities. So we're going to try to, we'll discuss in the small breaking room some of the challenges and specific solutions, but let's look at the big picture of opportunity. Nikki said about spreading the solidarity faster than the virus. It has happened. In Brazil specifically, every philanthropic record in the entire history of Brazilian philanthropy has been broken. We have tracked, I belong to a lot of philanthropic groups in Brazil and committees. We have been able to track 2.5 billion reais in donations so far, 95% of that from corporations. So we are not even able to track individual small donations, cash donations. So whatever the 2.5 billion reais in giving that we were able to track through public information is just a tip of the iceberg. We have never seen these levels of giving in Brazilian philanthropy ever. So there is an immense wave of giving and solidarity. In the United States, I was just reading the candid.org, the newsletter, and they track also donations globally. They have been able to track more than $6.8 billion in donations made so far. It's a lot of money in like just a handful of weeks, not even 2 months. This is also the tip of the iceberg. For instance, Brazil is not on the list. They are tracking mostly the donations from Chinese companies, American companies, and foundations. There are opportunities for grants. I was candid.org is is a resource for opportunities mostly in the United States. According to, I also checked their website prior to the call, there are 522 funds for relief for the COVID-19, more than 500 funds that were established. There are more than 100 open calls for proposals. So there are funders out there. Another phenomenon specifically for the United States philanthropy are what people call the donor advised funds. These are funds, individual and family funds, sometimes large, sometimes small, that are managed by either community foundations or mostly financial institutions like Fidelity Charitable, Schwab Charitable. So there are more than $120 billion in assets in those funds. When those families and individuals established those funds, they gave and they donated in times before the crisis. So they gave in times of abundance. This money can only go towards a nonprofit. So there is a pool of money there waiting to be deployed, and donors are giving at record levels. And I am sure it doesn't feel that way for many nonprofits who are basically witnessing increased demand for their services and facing hardship and hard choices, but there are resources out there. So in terms of opportunities, I think it doesn't matter which specific approach. I think there are some solutions and action steps that we can be discussed in the smaller breakout rooms. I think that one thing that we have to keep in mind is communication. I gave a few webinars, and communication is key. So I have some notes. If I'm looking down, it's because I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I don't forget anything. Communication is the biggest priority right now, because it can keep your stakeholders, partners, and donors engaged. Communication needs to happen in real time. You have to put your face out there, and it has to be personal. So in the webinar I gave, I even used Davi as my example. He was not so active in social media as in terms of making videos or lives, but at the day that he had to shut the refeitório, he made a video live. Listen, I have to do this because of that, but we are working to address the situation this way. So real time, personal. So this inspired confidence. So I will also talk a little bit about the tone. So people are very anxious in general. All the people you serve, your constituents, your partners, your donors, people are looking for steadiness, for a sense of normalcy. So I think some of the tone of the messaging and the communication is like, okay, crisis isn't going to go away anytime soon, but neither are we as an organization. We are here. This is what we are doing. It's an opportunity for you to reaffirm the cause, your mission. So I think some sense of steadiness and normalcy in the tone of communication. Also to show clarity and confidence in the work that you do, and remind everybody about your mission and your cause. And I think some of opportunities, I also read something on a blog. For instance, if you're fundraising and you never use advertising. So right now, because a lot of companies cut budget for advertising, it's much cheaper to advertise if you're ever going to pay for an ad for a campaign, for instance. And the audience will probably be higher because people are looking more at social medias and consuming more information. So there are all kinds of opportunities that can be explored, but content, creating content in YouTube, creating content by doing lives on Instagram, you can inform, you can engage, and I think communication is a very important part of what, you know, every organization, even companies, really should be doing right now, with caution and care about the tone. And again, people are not looking for perfection, but people are looking to see us doing the best that we can be doing under the circumstances right now. So I think this is what we need to convey. But in terms of fundraising, as I said, there is a lot of money out there, never before seen levels. And within the food industry, I think some nonprofits that work in culture or education will be hit hardest in terms of ability to fundraise. But the food security is a central concern, a central is key, providing access to food and not disrupting supply chains, and being even extra careful about no waste of food. Everything that you guys do is crucial, and I am confident that there are monies available to fund the work that all of you are doing right now. So we just have to be strategic about how we're going to seek those funds. And I think I'm running out of time, but I think the central message is keep your heads up high, acknowledge the people that we serve really need us, you know, this moment more than ever. And it's very, what I would like to also compliment Gastromotiva, because connecting is so important right now. Connecting, convening, the social gastronomy movement is playing a key role in convening brilliant minds and people on the ground with solutions, and trying to share these solutions that are working at the local level to other places. So the work, the convening work that you are doing is extremely, extremely important right now. So congratulations. So any questions?
Thanks, Patricia. Yeah, let's just open for questions. Thanks so much for that. I'm sure that was, yeah, the hands are saying everything that needs to be said. And if you want to make a question, we've got time for about two or three questions. If you just raise the hand by clicking on the participants at the bottom of your Zoom, and then you find your own name, and then you click on raise hand, and then we can open the microphone for you. So any questions for Patricia?
Q, I can't find the raise hand button. Can I just ask?
Go ahead. And that's the same for everyone else. If finding the raise hand button is what's stopping you from speak, then just speak. Go for it. Thank you.
I guess I could have done this.
Yeah.
Patricia, I'd be curious, and this relates to Nikki's comment. She said, let's think how we can seek those funds in a collective or a collaborative manner. What's your experience in seeing organizations that come in as a collective or a collaborative of multiple organizations, recognizing how they could work together and making a combined ask?
It's 10 times better, multiple times better than just funding individual things. And at Brazil Foundation, and David knows that we created early on, many years ago, groups like this to try to connect leaders, and we gave grants for collaboration for, you know, one organization to share experience, because as a funder, we see a lot of overlap, a lot of people trying to do the same thing, and there's a lot of waste of energy for people to try to reinvent the wheel. So we always gave grants for collaboration, for inter-exchange visits. We'll fund a visit of one leader to go to another. So funders want to see collaboration, you know, because simply more effective solutions can reach further. You know, we can go further in terms of impact by acting together. So I would suggest trying to find a strategy to apply for funds as a network. Also, there are some initiatives that can help amplify the collective messages of the nonprofit sector. For instance, the Giving Tuesday This was a global day of giving created after Black Friday. They are going to have a special edition on May 5th. So they are giving voice visibilities to a lot of fundraising initiatives all over the world. So there are platforms that will amplify campaigns and voices, but definitely by all means, I think applying for funds that will go towards collaboration, information sharing, and a broader, with impact, with more capillarity and more reach is very appealing for foundations. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Patricia.
Any other questions?
Am I allowed to participate, Q?
Am I allowed to say no? Obviously not.
You
Obviously
are.
not. Don't be silly. Of course you are.
I actually have a question, Patricia, because one thing that you mentioned in our briefing as well was that right now there's a lot of funds flowing, so there is this opportunity. But how do you see, and from your experience, what happens after the crisis mode? Because you have a lot of funds going out for emergency relief and crisis, but what happens after? So how can we secure financial stability as well for our grassroots organizations beyond the crisis?
I think there will be, looking at the recession in 2008 in the United States, the following year, giving levels dropped about 6%. And they did a research on what they interviewed major donors, like large, like philanthropists, they used to donating large sums. So why did you stop giving to this cause? And the answer, 2/3 of them replied, because I no longer felt connected to the cause. So there will be less money. In 2008 was followed by a 6% drop in giving. So there is increased giving right now, but it will be followed by a decreased moment. And but you have to understand the mindset of the donor. If the biggest reason they stopped giving is because they no longer feel connected, this is the opportunity. You guys have to connect, and you guys are doing that. So that's why I stressed a lot the importance of communications, personal communications, real time, using multiple channels, and using this opportunity to connect to your partners at a deeper level with a focus on your mission. And so how can we specifically prepare for what's going to come after, especially for the fall? I'm not sure that in-person events, which are especially important for the food industry, gatherings, I don't know when those are going to be allowed to happen. So in presence fundraising, the dinners, I cannot predict on those when those are going to be allowed to happen. So we have to be creative. Right now, everything is kind of virtual, but for sure, make sure you make a list of who are your most important supporters in the recent past and back in the day. So who are those important supporters? And you need to engage with them in a very personal manner. You need to call, make sure you acknowledge, also show empathy, ask how they are, show that you care, show that you understand that they also are, and if they are company or something in a situation of stress. But use this moment to create connections, because most of your funding is always going to come from your existing supporters. You will still have an opportunity now to show your work and reach to new audiences, and take the opportunity to reach to new audiences. 80% of your funding always will come from your existing or past supporters. So to prepare for what's going to come next, I would say the answer is relationship management. So basically keep your important partners very close to you right now, and they will continue to support, especially if they see that what you're doing now is extremely relevant, and it is. So I think that's, yeah, but it's still, you should be strategizing for what's going to come next.
Thanks, Patricia. Unless anyone's got like a really urgent question that they really want to make right now, I'm going to move on. So I'm just going to double check. Is there a last opportunity for now to make a question? Okay. So thanks a lot, Patricia. And we're going to now listen to Chris, who's been on the ground finding ways to respond. So Chris, the floor is yours, my friend.
Great, thank you very much. Well, welcome everybody, and it's great to see so many familiar faces and also some new ones. And this afternoon, I really just wanted to quickly introduce you to what we used to do with the Clink, based in the UK, reflect on how the pandemic has affected us, what steps we've taken to adapt, then focus on our learnings, and then the challenges we've got, and then what's next. So, and I'll be very happy to take any questions at the end. So in the UK, today's challenge is there are 85,000 adults in prison, and of those released, 50% return to prison in the first year. And the Clink was set up 10 years ago to break that cycle of crime by delivering specialist training in restaurants, kitchens, and in gardens as well. And we delivered this training in a real-life working environment in prison where the public come and dine in our restaurants. So we're educating the public as well and changing their perception of prisoners and helping them understand that the prison population is just a cross-section of society like you or I. We then also deliver event catering and a cafe working with the homeless as well, training them up to get their qualifications and experience so we can get them into work and accommodation so they don't go down the wrong route, which could potentially lead to a custodial sentence. In total, we have 11 training projects. We're based in 8 prisons across the UK, and we can train around 220 people a day. We then, more importantly, when they finish their training, meet them at the gate and support them into work and accommodation. The end result is we reduce the chance of somebody reoffending by 66%, and we currently have a reoffending rate of 7%, and also 300 employers who will take our graduates subject to a satisfactory interview. Because before the pandemic, we had a major skill shortage within the hospitality industry. So how has COVID-19 affected us? Well, it's affected us in a big way. On the 16th of March, it made illegal to open restaurants. So we had to close all our restaurants down. A week later, we had to close all our training projects down, and we asked our staff to work from home for a week. And then from the 1st of April, we've put them all on what's called furlough, which is a government scheme where they stay at home and the government pay them 80% of their salaries. So from a workforce of 60, we've gone down to 7. And of those 7, they're all community-based. They're our support workers, and they're working harder than ever supporting our graduates in the community. Last week, we helped around 100. They're losing their jobs, they're losing their accommodation, they haven't been paid their salaries. So we set up a fund to buy supermarket cards. They're preloaded cards, and we can tick what they can buy. So they can't buy beer and cigarettes and wine, but they've got to buy groceries. So it's for absolute essentials. We're also paying for emergency accommodation as well. Through all of this, communication is key, I believe, and that's what I've been spending most of my time doing. We've written to all our staff, setting out what's happening with regards to their employment and reassuring them at this stage their jobs are safe. We've written to all the prison governors as well to advise them on what we're doing with regards to obviously having to stop delivering the training in their prisons. But at the same time, I've offered our staff, and it'd have to be on their own individual basis, to volunteer in the main prison kitchens, cooking prisoners' meals, should the in-house catering team sickness levels increase. I've written to all our major funders. As Patricia was saying, it's really important to keep them close. I've had conversations with over 50 of our funders in the last 10 days, reassuring them of what we're doing and that we're trying to do our best, but also starting to entertain conversations with regards to if they've given us specific funding for a set purpose. I've been warming them up to say I may be coming back in 6 or 8 weeks' time to say, can you release the controls you have on that funding, and can we use it for core costs so we can keep delivering our services in the community, but also keeping our highly trained staff at home so we can hit the ground running when we come back. We set up the COVID-19 Emergency Graduate Support Fund. We did this through our funders, but also through social media. And in the first 10 days, we've raised around £50,000, which is $60,000 towards this fund. And we're burning the money quite quickly, sadly, because there are lots of people in need. So my key learnings from this approach really has been to communicate with everyone involved in a very open and honest way. We don't know what fully is happening. We don't know what the future holds, but we're on the case and we're doing the best we can at this very strange time. And I think that's been our message to all partners throughout. So the challenges we've had is going from a staff team of 60 down to 9 and still trying to do the day job, learning to work from home as well, and Zoom, which is a first for me. So it's been very different moving an organisation that's got 11 sites based around the UK, all into my home office. And keeping up to date with government legislation, it's changing several times a day. So with regards to the furloughing of the staff, they've changed it again yesterday, and they're still trying to work out things like what happens with sick pay, what happens with holiday pay, and things like that. So there's a lot of time learning and moving and changing and adapting as and when the rules change as well. But at the same time, being respectful to our suppliers. And if we owed them money, we're paying them money on time or before time. And also our suppliers have been very generous. Food that they were holding in stock for us, they've donated to local food banks. That side of things. So what next? Well, we're going to continue to communicate to all parties, whether they're trustees, funders, staff or suppliers, financially support our graduates and managing the emergency fund and updating social media. And I think that's a really key thing. We're very good normally at saying, look at us, this is what we're doing, you must love us, please give us your money to change people's lives. But actually, I think it's more about a sense of community now. So in the UK for the last few weeks, every Thursday night at 8 o'clock, everyone's coming out of their house and applauding the National Health Service workers, the doctors, the nurses, the paramedics. We've got a tweet going out tonight to say we're applauding the prison service staff and just really celebrating the people that are working, that have got the really difficult jobs on the front line, and the food banks as well. We're also starting to plan for several scenarios. We don't know when this is going to end. We don't know what it'll look like at the end, but we're working out different models about how we can be agile enough to adapt our model depending on what the requirements are, whether we can open restaurants legally or not. So hopefully that's just giving you a little bit of a snapshot of what we've been doing on the ground. Be very happy to discuss that further or take any questions. Thank you. Kai, you got some questions?
That was just a celebration of everything that you just shared. The questions come next for anyone that wants to make them. So, Hamid, you've got your hand up. Okay. So I'm going to call on Adit first. Adit, did I say your name correctly? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adit. I'm currently in Chicago, but I'm in the process of starting a restaurant in Pune, India that's essentially built around sustainable principles. So my question, Chris, is how do you see the pandemic changing things for the demand or the ability for consumers to want to come out and dine out after it's passed and after it's been declared safe?
Very interesting question, and one we've been looking at, because I think people quite often see that our restaurants as a nice experience for them. They're going to go into a prison where they wouldn't normally go. They're going to have a fine dining meal in a restaurant that's got quite high ratings on TripAdvisor. And obviously, if we do go into a recession after this time, people will have less disposable income to go out and dine. So we're adapting our messaging really to say it's not about them. Actually, by you coming to dine, you're giving a prisoner the opportunity to continue to gain valuable skills, to get a qualification, to turn your life around. And by you going there, you're helping that individual go back and help repair society. So the byproduct is, by you dining, you will have a nice meal, but actually that shouldn't be your motive for going. Your motive should be going is to help somebody turn their life around.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. And then Street Cube. I know that's not your name, but that's all I've got to go on. I'm just gonna, yeah, there we go. Can you unmute? I think, yeah.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Chris. Yeah, the name is Pascal. I'm the founder of Street Cube. We are a sustainable street gastronomy project opened with the help of Master Chef Raymond Blanc here in London. We use 10-foot shipping containers as sustainable street kitchens, which run on solar energy and have organic kitchen gardens growing up the sides of the containers. Chris, can I just ask you a couple of questions? You said that you had 11 sites around the UK, is that right?
That's correct.
Are they, presumably, they're sort of dining experiences within the prisons, is that it?
Yes, we have 4 fine dining restaurants in prisons in Surrey, Brixton, Cardiff and Manchester. We then have kitchens projects. We have a high street cafe in Manchester, and our event catering business works out of a women's prison in Sutton in Surrey, but we do the actual catering in venues such as the Guildhall and St Paul's Cathedral.
So presumably then, obviously the restaurants within the prisons are run by the inmates, but then when the inmates are released, what do they do? Do they have the chance to sort of continue working within the prison, or do they have to, do you have like high street, you have one high street place in Manchester, did you say?
Yes. Yeah, so when we take prisoners in the last 6 to 18 months of their sentence, train them up to get the practical experience and their qualifications, but we then meet them at the gate and we find them accommodation and full-time employment. And they go and work in 4- and 5-star hotels, Michelin-star restaurants with a good commercial full salary. And we've now got over 300 employers who will take on our guys subject to a satisfactory interview.
Well, that's great. So obviously at the moment, a lot of your outlets are closed.
Yes.
I'd like to talk to you in more detail about what we do, which is basically to place our 10-foot sustainable street kitchens into high footfall city centres to try to give young families and children the option of not going for that, the junk food option, you know, the high fat, trans fats, high sodium, high sugar choice, and to take something from the Street Cube, which is based on the Sustainable Development Goals and the Chef's Manifesto. So using products or ingredients which are grown with respect to earth and the oceans within the 100-mile radius, that a certain percentage of which need to be organic. We have a zero waste policy, zero plastic, and basically, you know, good food is available to everyone at a reasonable price, like £5-6, etc. It's like street food, but better quality. You know, the kitchens lock up overnight, they're solid, secure, hygienic. And of course, you know, during COVID-19, we're still operating. So would there be a conversation we could have about helping you to get your chefs into our Street Cubes?
Yeah, we certainly, with our homeless clients, we could certainly hook up with you, because we're always looking at places for employment, and we're also members of the Chef Manifesto, and the values align, so we can pick that up offline.
Fantastic. I mean, we built, you know, with sustainability.
Oh, I'm going to have to interrupt. I'm just going to have to interrupt here. First of all, I'm just celebrating, because this is all what we're about, is finding connections between people. That so I'm so happy you guys are going to meet offline. And I also noticing that there's 2 other hands up, and I want to give space for the other people to also ask.
Sure, go ahead. Okay, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Kyo.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Hamid, you had your hand up as well. You want to come off mute? Or is that me? There, that's me, okay.
Yeah, I am unmuted by the host. Perfect. So my question is for Chris, but also like maybe later for the round. We talked about like that we need to appeal to the local communities now, and simply individuals or little organizations to help fund and support. And I think communication strategies at this time play a big role. And I'm wondering, like, and of course, like, we're using tools such as Facebook, newsletter, but what else? How are we appealing to all those community actors and so on? Is there a specific strategy? Is there a certain tip that is really concrete that one found out, whether by using individual specific tools or by how we use the tools in the first place? We find a bit of a, just to say, like a worry that I have, because I feel like individuals in our communities are also overwhelmed now by the amount of organizations, plus freelancers, plus trainers, plus, who are appealing to the public because they are in need of support. And also it's kind of a race, and I feel like the individual who wants to spend something or donate something is a bit overwhelmed. That's just as a side note that I'm feeling.
I think there's, we haven't got a set strategy, but we're using our existing channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, e-shots, website, but that obviously appeals to a certain age group, and a lot of the older people want to support us that maybe don't do social media. So I've done quite a bit with local radio, and we're getting checks through the post now, which is very nice. But I think it's just, as I say, just generally openly communicating all avenues, and a lot of people don't generally give money. So when you do have things like this, people will donate for maybe the first time or the only time that year. Just to give you a really extreme example, there's a retired captain in the British Army who's 99, and he came out and said he was going to walk around his garden 100 times before his 100th birthday at the end of April, and he wanted to raise £1,000 for the National Health Service. It's just been on the television today. He's raised £17 million from doing all these laps of his gardens, and people are just donating small amounts of money but in huge volumes. So I think this time it's challenging everyone's hearts, even people that haven't given before. So I wouldn't be ashamed of going to ask for money, and it's their choice whether they choose your project, my project, or something else. And I don't think it really matters, but it's making sure people feel a sense of community and they're contributing and sharing it as well.
Perfect. I really like the guy's idea, and I think this is also part of my question, is that by strategies, I mean, there are ways to get creative with it. And what he did is, I also, there's an organization in Berlin, maybe just to share, like everybody who wants to fund or donate to a specific organization would find a specific individual that would fund him with a certain amount for each kilometer that he runs. And that we have a running week, and each individual who joins this platform can just go about every day running as many kilometers as they often can, and another person would be funding them, I mean, or an organization. And I find these plays are also like, that are bringing a good spirit to it. And I'm also like wondering what else is out there, but you already gave a super cool idea.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got there's two people. Camilla, you had raised your hand and it went down again. I'm curious to know whether you had your question answered or whether you wanted to still make a question.
Yeah, my question was
one more question with Paula.
Kind of answered, but I was well. First of all, thank you so much, Chris. This is like such a great chance to hear you. It's like makes me see the future, you know. But my question was about restructuring, you know, because here in Chile, we've been really hit by the social movement first, and right away we had all the COVID-19 issues. So all the industry has been moving on to like most delivery services. So what do you think about that kind of link or that kind of change in between foundations and this kind of food industry in relationship to that change? That was one of my questions.
I think it's great, if I understand your question correctly, I think it's great how adaptable companies have been. And some of our food suppliers that only traditionally supplied the industry are now supplying for homes. Some restaurants are opening up cooking meals and then delivering it to the hospitals for the hospital staff. And then in total contrast, we're short of ventilators in our hospitals, and they've gone to people like Dyson, who make the vacuum cleaners, Mercedes, who do the Formula One racing cars. They're building ventilators now for the hospitals, and this was mobilized within a few days. So I think it's really great to see how adaptable people are, and also looking for opportunities as well to continue to provide service and help. But I think coming out of it, as I say, we don't know where we're going to be. The world will be a very different place. We will all be different. And we're just going to have to continue to evolve and adapt to the restraints put around us at this strange time.
Thank you, Chris. We've got one last question from Paola, and then we're going to move into the peer-to-peer groups.
Chris, hi.
Hi.
How are you? Yeah, my question is, what would you recommend to smaller organizations? Because I mean, like the Clink already has like its strong donator space. Would you rather recommend to focus on private donors at the moment, or rather enterprises? Like where would you like put your focus on? Because as an example, like Platos Sin Fronteras, we put like all our we thought we were going to get a big support from a company this year, and now it broke down because everyone is like kind of pulling back. So what would you recommend there, like regarding, because depending on that, it also depends to which channels you're going to start communicating, right?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously best and hopefully easier to continue to communicate with the people you already know. So the people that have already bought into your project and support you and respect what you do. There's no harm in going back with a cap again and saying, either can I use the money you've given me for something else for this now, or would you be open to giving me a little bit more money? Actually, in the volume of money we've got in for our support fund, that's come from the general public, not from grant maintaining trusts. And what we've found is we've on the e-shots we've been doing, the click-through rate on the stories, the one that's worked is people want real life stories. They want to know about your client, your student, how it's affecting them today, what your organization is doing to make a difference to their life and the effect, and maybe even a quote from one of your clients as well. And we've had something like an 85% click-through rate on personal stories. We normally get a click-through rate of 30–35%. So I think, again, it's about making it real and trying to tell people a story about what's happening today in your organization and what their money could do. But I wouldn't write off your existing funders as well, because I think everyone's thinking differently. A lot of our bigger trusts who only give away capital and now actually, give away interest, and now actually giving away capital as well, because they recognize that huge sums of money are needed today rather than keeping it for something else tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Chris, and everyone for the questions. That was really inspiring. I got a sense that people were really finding the information and relating it to what they're living, and then making a question and then deepening, and that's really the point of the call today. I'd like to, before we go to the peer-to-peer sharing, I'd like to invite like a small moment of reflection, because there was a lot of information shared now, and I want us to really like find a way to connect to the piece that spoke to us. So I kind of like, for the reflection as well, I find it really helpful. I mean, and everything that I offer now is an offer, so you don't have to do this, but I'm going to invite people, to find a comfortable seat first, to adjust the body so we're not just totally in the head, so we can just find a comfortable space to sit. And then for those of you who it's comfortable, to close the eyes. Everything's an invitation. You don't have to do anything, obviously, but the invitation is to close the eyes. Someone just said I sound like their meditation app. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but anyway. So let's just take a moment to just to tune into the sounds that you're hearing in the environment, just noticing the distant ones, and the closer ones. And then still listening into the sounds, now listening into the body as well, and feeling the sensations in the body, especially where you've got contact with the floor, with the earth. Just noticing the sensation of the support received. And then continuing listening to the sounds and listening into the body, we also listening into the breath, just noticing how the breath is passing in and out. Noticing the sensation of it, of the breath coming in and out, and the sounds and the sensations. And just taking a moment to feel all of the people listening in and feeling all of the people on this call. We're all over the world, and yet there's all these people on the call with questions and purposes and shared challenges. Just to feel that company. And then just like to ask you, what touched you today? What insights or what was said that spoke to you? We've heard a lot of things, but what was it that stood out most in everything that was shared up until now? And what question or theme is still alive for you that you'd like to explore, that you feel would help you to take a next step? And then just taking a few intentional breaths, filling out the body before we come back, just taking some deep breaths in and full breaths out. And then whenever you feel ready, starting to open the eyes and then writing down the responses that you came up with during the reflection. So I'm just going to share my screen so that it's got the two questions that we were reflecting on, which is, what insights do you take away from what you've heard so far? And what question or theme would you like to explore that would help you to take the next step in your organization? If you could just write your answers to that down, because that's what we're going to share in the breakout groups. When we're going to go into groups of 3 or 4, and we're going to share, each person's going to share their answers to this. So I'm just going to give about 2 minutes or so for people, 2 to 3 minutes for people to just write their answers down. So I'm seeing a couple of heads still looking down, so I'm going to give another 30 seconds and then we're going to come back. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly explain what's going to happen now. Actually, I'm going to share my screen again. This is, so we're going to now break out into groups of 3 or 4 people. And we're just going to ask that one by one, you introduce yourselves, your organization, and what you wrote down in your reflections. What we would like to ask is that you choose, before you start sharing, you choose a note taker, someone that's going to register specifically the themes that people want to explore on the next call. So this person's going to write those themes down as they hear people speaking them. And then when we return to the big room with everyone together, you're going to post those to the chat. And that is going to enable us to see what the whole group most wants to explore. So this is really important that the person, this note taker, can harvest specifically the themes that people want to explore on the next call. And I'd just like to remind you to divide the time by participant. And also, there are some people who are participating who may not be in an organization or project at the moment. And I'd just like to say that that our presence in listening to what people are sharing is a huge contribution. And please don't miss the opportunity to share, because it's the sharing of everything that came up that can then take us to a next level of understanding. So are there any questions about what I've suggested as the process before we go to the breakout groups? Okay, so I was unusually clear. Clesia, this is the moment in which you could break us out into the groups. Please enjoy, please communicate. The peer-to-peer part is just as important as all the rest, and come back with the themes you want to explore and enjoy.
We'll see you next week.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
See you next week. Thanks, guys.
Ciao.
Goodbye. Ciao.
Ciao. Anyone from the team that's staying on for feedback? Wonderful.